to welcome you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time to join us for our District 6 Town Hall meeting. This is a district-wide town hall meeting where we're principally going to focus on fires, fire prevention, and talk about some of the efforts that we have in the Lower Arroyo and elsewhere throughout the city. And it's a really great agenda tonight. So again, thank you for joining us. We've been very busy at City Hall. I feel like I always say that to you, but it truly is the case, as I know the city manager and our public safety and other department heads who are here tonight can echo. We're in our budget cycle now. We approve our budget every year toward the end of the fiscal year, which we're on a June 30 fiscal year end. And so we've started our meetings where each department and budget center for the city cycles through an assigned committee and then comes up to the full city council. And then we have joint meetings of the finance committee and the full city council, and that all results in the approval of a budget. And I want to encourage you all to get involved in that process. I think a number of us have felt like that it is sort of formulaic and that there may not be room for innovation or bold new initiatives. And I know our city manager, who's fabulous, is still a relative newcomer, 3 years, Miguel, in Pasadena. And I think this year in particular, some of the lessons learned from the fires that we'll talk about tonight may give rise to some proposals, at least. We'll see. There are other proposals that I have about, in particular, public safety. I think we're staffed for our police department. Our population has grown significantly. The challenges of enforcing the law, public safety in a city like ours have increased with increased density of housing, increased development, increased traffic. And yet our police department is down some 30 or 40 sworn officers from its high point, some 25, 30 years ago. So I'd like to see if we can address that. I'd like to see us have a dedicated, modern headquarters for our fire department. And I'd like to have us have our own training center. Right now, the men and women in our fire department go and train at facilities that are maintained by other cities. The one I'm familiar with, because I've been through the training, is Glendale. And it's nearby, but I want people to come train in Pasadena. I want our men and women to be here in case we have that perfect storm of a fire or an earthquake or a public safety event like we did earlier this year. And so we'll see. You notice the city manager has his nose firmly in a book or in his phone as I'm laying out all these big initiatives. He works for 8 of us, the mayor and the 7 city council members. And I always quote a professor of mine who taught me that, economics is the science of human choice in a world with limited resources. There is always way more goals and objectives than there are resources to accomplish them. So it's not easy, but we're undertaking that process, and I invite you to get involved. I want to quickly mention that 2 big things, not to deter the discussion tonight or impede, but we have, other than the budget, 2 big things that our district in particular really cares about, I know, are the 710 project and the Colorado Street Bridge project. So I wanted to just quickly update you about those before we dive into the other things that we have. And I will tell you, on the 710, we had a meeting of the 710 ad hoc committee of the city council. This is something that Mayor Gordo, at my suggestion and the suggestion of others, formed a couple of years back. And we haven't had as many meetings as we should have, candidly. And so I've been advocating that we meet more often. It's scary to think about, but this August will mark the 3rd year anniversary of the city of Pasadena's ownership of fee simple title to those 50 acres that form the trench. And government is not intended to work like private sector, right? There are many important reasons why government has a different rhythm and approach. We emphasize individual rights and hearing from all corners, if you will, due process, deliberativeness. Those are important values. And still, I'm feeling like if I were a developer at a private firm and 3 years ago I had convinced the firm to purchase 50 acres and I still didn't have a plan, there might be somebody else sitting at my desk next week. So we need to get going. And important factors, there are 7 different work streams or modules that are being considered, at least hypothetically. And we need to get going on each and every one of those and put together a plan. And it may not be easy, right? We're going to probably disappoint some people. Harry Truman said the job of the president is to say yes and no, but mostly no. And so there's no easy way out for leaders who are looking at a long-term project like this, but we're gonna have to make some decisions as a city council and say that's the direction we're going in. And I have firm beliefs and ideas about that, but I'm hoping that you'll see that all unfold very soon, and again, that you'll participate in that and let us know what your vision is, for those 50 acres. And remember, it's hard because it's not just based on our lifetime experience, but what's this next generation gonna want and need, and what are the technological, transportation, environmental, and other demands of the community going to be for the next 100 years out into the future. So it's exciting, and you'll hear more about that. In terms of the Colorado Street Bridge, another project that's sort of been delayed, we have a new Public Works Director. He's here tonight, Greg DeVink, and we're moving forward now with mock-ups, full-size mock-ups. They've been ordered. They'll be rolled out. I'm told they're even like in transit, and by the end of this month, they'll be here in Pasadena. Once they're here, they'll be constructed on site, and then we'll all have a chance to evaluate and hopefully be able to move forward in some direction. It was years ago now when the then city manager, Steve Mermel, made the decision as the city manager, as the CEO of the municipal services operation that is the city, it wasn't a council decision, but I concurred with it. The year I think we had 12 either suicides or suicide attempts in 1 year. The decision was we have to elevate public safety and human life at this point and put in the chain link fences, but they've been there too long and we need a permanent solution. So those are just a couple of topics. I have a couple more quick things and then we're gonna turn to the fires. I actually have a plaque here, or a certificate for my longtime friend and sometimes nemesis, Nina Chomsky, who is here in the front row. And we all know Nina. She is a constant presence at City Hall and has been involved with the Linda Vista Annandale Association for decades, as near as I can tell. And well, I'm going to read the proclamation in a moment, but she's decided to step away from the LVAA. I know she's going to continue to be involved. I've already got some ideas about commission service that Nina can bring her substantial experience and wisdom and advocacy. But Nina, come up and let me just read you this plaque. Now, I have to tell you, this passed by a 4-3 vote. It was my motion, so I supported it. It says, recognition to Nina Chomsky. On behalf of the residents of West Pasadena, and particularly the beautiful neighborhoods of Linda Vista, Annandale, and the entire Pasadena community, we commend your decades of selfless and exemplary service, including as president of the Linda Vista Annandale Association. You have been a tireless and forceful advocate for neighborhood protection and the preservation of our extraordinarily high quality of life we enjoy in Pasadena. Although some may have disagreed with your positions from time to time, you were always heard and respected, for which you have our utmost gratitude and appreciation. So Nina, I'd like to present that to you. Yes. And then I'm not beyond a little pandering to, get support. So we also have just a small token of our appreciation here. Can we do a photo real quick? January 1st of this year, the attention of the entire world was on Pasadena, as it is every New Year's Day. The parade and the football game were the center of the world's celebration of New Year's Day, again, as they are every single year. And, you know, for me, it's I don't know who would want to be anywhere else other than Pasadena on New Year's Day. It's really virtually everything that's great about America, right? It's education and young people and the rest of us who maybe are younger. It's the military and veterans. It's athletics and the arts. It's music, and all in a context of civic and community mindedness with the Tournament of Roses, this wonderful nonprofit, and some 12 or 1,500 volunteers all working so hard. And then we go to the stadium that's been there for over 100 years, and we have this football game. This year, if you were an Oregon fan, maybe not so hot, but the silver lining was you lost to the national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, what an honor that was. And it's all in this spirit of hope and renewal that we have with New Year's. It's sort of silly, right? It's something we humans invented. But on our calendar, it marks the start of a new year. And again, with that, this hope and renewal that as the Counting Crows famously sing, you know, maybe this year will be better than the one before. And each year, the Tournament of Roses president selects a theme for the parade. So it's a different theme every year, right? We all know this because we've lived it. This year, the president selected the best day ever. That was the theme of this year's parade, and it was the best day ever. 6 days later, it was the worst day ever, literally. And I remember where I was when I learned that we were on fire. It was before 7 p.m., and my son actually texted me, and he was on his way to a hockey practice, and he said, "Dad, I think the fires are nearby, like maybe even Sierra Madre," and he sent me a photo. And they were Pasadena, not Sierra Madre. And what unfolded was our worst nightmare. You know, thousands of our neighbors homeless now. I don't know if you've driven up into Altadena. I've done 6 or 8 tours with elected officials from Congress and from the state and the county, and it never gets better as you drive through those, what used to be neighborhoods. Literally, for those of us that are history buffs, Dresden in World War II, it just completely leveled. And boy, did our city rise to the occasion. Look at what we did. In 90 minutes, we converted the convention center here, which, remember, we invested $152 million to renovate and rehabilitate 15 years ago. We converted it to an evacuation place for people, a shelter to come, and we had up to 1,000 people sheltered there who were evacuees. What other city of our size could do something like that? We were benefited from the fact that we'd been through COVID, and we had set it up as a shelter then with 600 hospital beds that we never really needed, but we had that practice, and we knew how to do it. We knew how to react, and we had the values as a city, as a community, to do the right thing. At the Rose Bowl, with the paint from the game still on the field, I mean, I was down there, the names of the teams were still on the field, and we turned it into a command center where about 4,000 first responders, mostly firefighters from all over the western United States, certainly, and points beyond, bivouacked. We set up food service and ultimately showers and restrooms, and they would deploy on 12-hour shifts, go out and come back, fighting these fires. And I was down there almost every night for a week or two after the fires, and it was amazing to hear the stories of these firefighters from small towns, in the Northwest, and I would try to thank them, but they would look at me and say, "Where do you think we want to be? Like, this is why we do what we do. We want to be helping people and fighting fires." And I said, "I know, but what if there was something in your community right now?" They said, "Oh, sir, we know that you would do the exact same thing for us." And in fact, we would. We send our firefighters. Every big fire you've ever read about or seen on the evening news in the West, we've sent firefighters there, I guarantee you. And so I think our city, and again, the Rose Bowl, we have the ability to do that because we know how to do big events. I mean, if you were in almost any other city, even dare say LA, where would you site it? How would you sort of organize the political and staff resources to be able to actually make it happen that quickly? Respectfully, I don't think they could do it. We can do it because we're small enough to be quick on our feet, and we're big enough to have these important icons that can be utilized in that way. So I am beyond grateful, and we've got a bunch of people here tonight. I wanted to start this discussion, and look, I get there's always room for improvement. What's the next big challenge? We had a pretty strong earthquake down near San Diego here recently, and you know, some of us were thinking, gosh, what if during the fires that earthquake hits and it's, you know, a little bit bigger? What then? So lessons learned, to be sure, but it would be derelict for us to not take a moment and just thank the people that were heroes, literally. There's one group that I haven't mentioned. Well, there's probably a bunch, but you know, we have our Pasadena Transit, right? These are our transportation professionals who manage what we used to call the dash buses, you know, and that night they were pressed into service, and they were driving the people that were being rescued from the homes up and in particular the assisted living facility up in Altadena, driving them out so they could get to safety. They're not trained to deal with, you know, the 1,500-degree environment that is a forest fire, or, you know, have embers and trees falling in front of their, and not a single one of them ever hesitated. They have absolutely, where do you need me to go? So we have some of those folks here as well. And I'm so grateful. Could I maybe let me just start by asking all of our city staff, all city staff, because believe me, every single department was involved. Our police chief, I don't think he went home for a week. I mean, and he wasn't, you know, no offense, Bruce, playing pickleball. Where's Bruce Bailey? I'm not picking on pickleball, but he was working around the clock. Same with our fire chief, same with our deputy fire chiefs, and every person, you know, right down the line in the city. We should be so, so proud. Can I just ask everyone who's a city employee to please stand, and can the rest of us just thank you all. Thank you. I do want to call out my friends from Transit, Letty and Erasmo Rodriguez. Stand up, Erasmo. I'm going to embarrass you here for a minute. Erasmo was one of those drivers, and he also... He also led these tours of groups of members of Congress. And I mean, I'm talking like big time. Hakeem Jeffries was here, the head of the caucus back in Washington. And that was probably more stressful than the night of the fires, having to make sure these members of Congress didn't trip getting off the bus or what have you. But just really, really heroic work. And we're so grateful. And so we've got some presentations tonight about that fire and you know, the role that we played. And I would suggest that's the right starting point for looking forward and what can we do better. And I know there's some issues, particularly in the northwest quadrant of the lower Arroyo, where we've got some brush clearance work to do, and we're addressing that. But I do, again, I think we'd be derelict if we didn't start and address, you know, what happened on January 7 and what are those specific lessons that are learned. So I know we've got a short video first about the role of Pasadena Transit, and I just wanted to play that for you so you can see firsthand what we were talking about. And just a word, I've learned so much from the public safety folks about, we think of a fire as being, you know, don't put your hand in the fireplace or something like that, and that's true, but a fire of this magnitude is like the inside of an oven, but without the walls moving as fast as it can to get new fuel, be that oxygen or material, vegetation or houses or whatever's in the way. Some of those 17 people that perished in Altadena, had garden hoses in their hand. And you just can't appreciate the force of these, the heat and the flames and the embers. So do you want to roll that tape, Justin?
Being called heroes after rushing into flames of the Ayton fire to help evacuate senior citizens.
And Jasmine Veal is live in Altadena at one of the senior living facilities that burned to the ground with cell phone video of what these drivers faced. Jazz?
It's pretty incredible, Juan and Pat. So this was a call for help. Not to first responders, though. Imagine you had staff members here with authorities frantically trying to get out dozens of seniors from this living facility, right as it began to burn at Washington and Altadena. And that's when Pasadena Transit bus drivers, yes, bus drivers got that call. And all across Altadena, they helped evacuate 500 people.
Right down Lake Avenue.
Yeah. Oh my God.
As flames closed in, a group of Pasadena bus drivers drove into the inferno last week.
Our eyes were red from all the ashes.
They were called to help rescue hundreds of people from senior living facilities across Altadena threatened by the Eaton fire.
Firefighters were helping, the nurses were helping. We're putting wheelchairs all the way down there, locking them in place.
35-year-old Erasmo Rodriguez, an operations manager with Pasadena Transit, was the first to jump into a bus that night and race to Washington and Altadena, where he saw this chaotic scene as facilities burned.
We're just boarding the buses, getting as many people as we could. It didn't matter where they sat, on the ground, anywhere. Leave your walker behind, leave your wheelchair behind. Fit as many people as we can.
Pasadena Transit maintenance manager Adan Morera says he also saw the fire on the hills near his home and came back to work to help.
I told my GM how many buses they need out there to help them evacuate. We took 4 more buses. It was horrible. Going up there, just a lot of black smoke, fire embers hitting the bus, hitting us. There was a bush in front of 7-Eleven caught on fire right in front of our eyes.
He says he did his best to comfort those seniors who were confused and scared.
So right here, I had an elderly lady. She had her dog. She got out of the house so fast she forgot the leash.
Letty Ochoa, Pasadena Transit's general manager, says she staffed 11 buses, sending them out in a caravan through the smoke.
I said, you don't have to do this. And they're like, no, we want to do this. Let us do it. Like, we're on our way. So they didn't even think about it.
Risking their own lives for strangers and for those these bus drivers say they know well as regular passengers.
These guys are heroes, true heroes, because they're not trained for that. We're trying to move, the city around, but not do this.
Rodriguez, though, refuses to be called that, saying he did what he had to do.
It needs to get done. Somebody needs to do it.
So many, as you can see behind me, seniors' homes that were lost, right? And sadly, Pasadena Transit tells me 2 of their employees, 2 bus drivers, also lost their homes in this fire, but none of those who were working to help evacuate so many people that night. Live here in Altadena, Jasmine Veal, KCAL News.
All right, Jasmine, thank you.
Yeah, just incredible. And I'm sure it wasn't lost on you, the name of the city underneath the location there. It was Altadena. It's not even our dirt, guys. I mean, that's not our jurisdiction. Our officers and firefighters and bus drivers, but these people went into public service to serve the public, and it didn't matter. There were people in need, and Pasadena responded, and we're so proud. The city manager and I took a picture with Letty and Erasmo in front of one of the buses, and it's almost poetic. I wish I'd brought it, because you saw one of those signs maybe that said out of service on the buses, but the way that the photographer took the picture, it's the 4 of us, and then above us is just the word service. And I couldn't say it any better myself. It is the highest standards of public service. So we're so grateful. And with that, let me turn to our great CEO, City Manager Miguel Marquez, my friend and colleague. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Madison, and good evening to you all. That video is always so inspiring. When asked to help they said yes. And that happened over and over and over again. That is the story of January 7th. It lasted for weeks, frankly, with big needs, big decisions we had to make over and over and over. I was put into a place where I had the task of reaching out and asking our partners to help on big issues. And each and every time the answer was yes. So I want to thank, in particular, Jens Whedon over at the Rose Bowl. I actually called him maybe 45 minutes into the fire, and I said, Jens, we need the Rose Bowl. He said, they already called me. I'm not sure if it was Tim Sell or Anthony James from Fire, but he said, I already told him, whatever you need, it's yours. It includes Mike Ross here at the convention center. I think, the fire started around 6:15, and he got the call at 8 o'clock. Can we use the convention center? He was here by 8:10 with a key opening the door. It includes Dr. Jose Gomez, who's the chancellor at PCC, and we really needed a place to have a disaster recovery center to help people get their documents, to help bring nonprofits, to help everybody come together. And I called Jose and I said, hey, I really need a place. Can you help? And he said, give me a couple of hours. I called back. We had the Disaster Recovery Center right here in Pasadena. It included our nonprofit partners, our business partners, our hotels who were amazing, our faith-based friends, our philanthropic partners who raised tens of millions of dollars and are still helping every day. In essence, everyone I reached out to over the course of several weeks, they all said yes. We also evacuated literally tens of thousands of people that night, almost everyone just north of the 210. Yet, as was mentioned a minute ago, only about 1,000 were here. That is quite a feat to open up this place in a couple of hours and have 1,000 people evacuated, many of whom had special needs here at the convention center. But I also want to highlight that the rest of the people, probably on the order of 50, 60, 70,000, evacuated themselves. They signed up for the alerts, they listened, they evacuated, and they made our jobs easier. So thank you for all you did to help us get through that incredible night and those incredible weeks. So tonight you're going to hear from members of my city team about the fire and about other issues. Remember, it wasn't just a fire, it was a windstorm with lots of trees knocked over, with lots of debris in the streets, and hard to do the work of first response. So let me start by saying it's been the privilege of my career to work alongside our fire chief, who was keeping me informed every step of the way, our police chief, who's here, and you'll hear from both of them later on tonight. It was probably the biggest challenges of our professional careers. And remember, we all went through COVID as well, but this one was focused and really tested us on every level. And those challenges continue today, but I'm pleased to report we're making great progress on recovery. So, as I said, it's been a privilege to work alongside them, and truly the work of those days and weeks saved many, many lives. But it's equally a privilege to work with the rest of my staff, so many of whom became first responders on January 7th. What I mean by that is we had librarians, and we had members of the parks staff come over to the convention center here and become first responders, helping people get food, beds, medical care, prescriptions. They became first responders. It included our power staff who battled 100-mile-an-hour winds, keeping your lights on. We did have some power outages, but very few compared to others, and we restored it pretty quickly, even while it was very windy outside. It includes water staff who went into our reservoirs with fire extinguishers, and I have some video of them putting out fires inside of the reservoir, trying to make sure that your water was safe, and later on they tested it, it was clean. We removed the do not drink order for those who were affected in record time. It includes our public works staff. I think Mr. DeVink is here. I see him in the back there. We clean up those streets, given both not just, again, the windstorm, but the fire and everything else in quick order. Maybe he'll talk a little bit if he comes up or not, but we rented big machinery to really clear out as quickly as we could. And finally, I'm going to say it included our park staff and so many others, but I have a video of our park staff at one of the parks with shovels throwing dirt on top of fire that had caught in Victory Park. Somehow Pasadena High School survived because you had fire on the other side at Victory Park. I don't know how that works, but I'm just grateful. So thanks to everybody, and we'll hear from our fire chief. But before I do that, I do want to say a few words about the next big thing to come, and as Councilmember Madison suggested, it's the budget. You may have read about our neighbor, the city of Los Angeles, and its billion-dollar budget deficit, and the layoffs they're going to have to enact and other measures they're taking. You might have heard about the county of Los Angeles with their big, I'm going to say $47, $48 billion budget, having to do 3% budget cuts. Or even here in our hometown, Pasadena Unified, having to do layoffs. It's tough right now, and things are tight for us here at the city too. And one of the things that's been tricky is the uncertainty that we're facing with the federal administration, the new federal administration. But let me give you an example. Early on, just as we're trying to move past response and into recovery, I don't remember the exact date, but it was a Tuesday morning. I do remember that. And we get a letter from our partners in Washington, D.C., and they let us know, hey, they just froze $3 trillion in funding. I never thought I would see something like that. So right away, I asked my finance director, how much do we have in federal dollars? And the answer is about 50 million plus, somewhere between 50 and 60 million. It varies year by year. By that lunch hour, they had sent a clarifying memo. No, it's only related to these handful of executive orders. Those are frozen. I said, well, how much does that affect us? By the end of that day, we were down to a smaller number of executive orders. And then the next morning, it was off. And the $3 trillion were back. But that's what we're living through. How do you manage when you lose 50 million and the next 24 hours, it's right back? And now there's been a whole bunch of other things that are happening that have created uncertainty, but that's one example. Fortunately, though, I'm pleased to report we're in a different position from so many of our sister jurisdictions. Money is tight, but I'm pleased to report our reserves are fully funded, and that's going to help us get through this stormy weather. And it appears at this moment that I'm going to be able to recommend a balanced budget without layoffs and without other major cuts. Our growth will be more limited than I wish. I think we all want to do better and have more resources to get more done, but at least we're not in the place where we have to cut, and I think that's very important. And I want to just highlight that's because of the years and years of fiscal prudence that we've practiced here in Pasadena. And I give credit to the city council, to my predecessors, city managers, our finance department, and everybody else, and all of you for understanding why we need to be fiscally prudent as we build our budgets and we operate year to year. So with that, I don't want to get in the way of an incredible story. I think next up is going to be our Fire Chief, Chad Augustine, and he's going to tell you a little more about the events of January 7th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you very much. As the chief and his staff come up, I just wanted to echo the city manager. There's no question in my mind that no fires on January 7th. We're still in a state of emergency behind the high windstorms and the trees that were fallen. Many of us remember 2011, the windstorms. I have no way of knowing if it was as bad as that, but it was emergency status in terms of just the windstorm. Federal government, you know, remember this as you follow all the ups and downs of that administration. We've never gotten our fair share of our tax dollars. The money that we send to Washington never comes back anywhere near the same amount. So sometimes you get this impression that it's largesse or philanthropy, or it's our money. It's our tax dollars that we send back there. And I don't know how this happens. Maybe they put it in stagecoaches and it just never reaches the West Coast or something, but we don't get our share, and we need to be more muscular, I think, as electeds. I'm not looking at the staff for this. As electeds, we need to be more muscular about asking for our fair share, especially when we have a disaster. So I'll get off my soapbox and let Chief Augustine and his command staff come on up. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening to each of you. For those I haven't met, Chad Augustine, your Pasadena Fire Chief. With me tonight, I have Deputy Chief Tim Sell and our emergency manager, Naomi Procopio. And you'll hear a little bit more from her after I give you a little bit of a timeline from the fire. Chief Sell's in charge of the slides, because otherwise I'll just keep talking and I'll still be on slide one. I want to give you some background leading up to January 7th. And it's important to highlight that so many of the things that went right during the initial hours of January 7th and the Eden Fire came from many years of hard work from your city staff leading up to January 7th. And I want to say thank you to City Manager Marquez, Councilmember Madison, and all of our city council for prioritizing preparedness, because it really paid off. A little bit of background, in 2022, your fire department started work on the city's first ever evacuation plan. In 23, we hired Naeli, which was probably the biggest blessing in disguise. Prior to Naeli, we had a shared responsibility emergency manager, and that person did amazing work, right, but via 2 roles. And then also in 23, we presented a finalized first run-through of our evacuation plan. And then we even were able to exercise that plan in November of 24, which really proved to be a blessing. Naeli got right to work and updated the city's local hazard mitigation plan. She also developed, instead of a 21-hour formal training program, which is fantastic, but not a lot of us have 21 hours over a weekend. She developed a 4-hour condensed version called Prepared Pasadena. And it really provides our residents the essential knowledge, skills, and abilities to be prepared in a disaster. And again, that paid off on January 7th. So the week leading up to January 7th, we received word that there was a possible wind event coming to Southern California, in addition to severe red flag conditions and severe drought conditions like we haven't seen in a while. What was unique about this wind event was they specifically highlighted a half a dozen cities that could take an impact from the wind that are usually protected and don't see the wind. And if you notice, right, when there's red flag conditions and high winds, there may be 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds 10 miles away from Pasadena, and we'll have a 10-mile-an-hour wind. We're just protected by the mountains, but not on January 7th. So we immediately started working with our partners from the National Weather Service, and we have a great relationship with them. They're out of Oxnard, and we use them for all of our major sporting events at the Rose Bowl, as well as the parade and the game. And so we can pick up the phone and call them. And they gave us daily updates of what they thought might be coming. And we immediately, based on that information, started implementing our plan. Your fire department worked with BSFMD to ensure that all of our frontline and reserve fire apparatus, pickup trucks, ambulances, anything that we could put in service was ready to go if it was needed. We also sent a request from the state to the state of California through the Office of Emergency Services to have a pre-positioned strike team of additional firefighting resources positioned in our backyard, just in case there was a need. We declared red flag conditions throughout Pasadena, and multiple city departments upstaffed in preparation of what might be coming. That included the fire department, the police department, your public works, water and power, and so many more. We also activated our emergency operations center, and thank goodness for Naeli, we had about 2 weeks worth of staffing, 24 hours a day, just in case there was a need. On the day of January 7th, we had twice a day executive leadership team briefings, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Again, as I mentioned, we had staffing ready, and our EOC at that time was activated at a virtual level with on-call staffing identified. As many of you know, the Palisades fire started at 10:30 that morning, and there was an incredible drawdown of fire and law enforcement resources from all over LA County as they asked for as many resources as possible. Not only LA County, but Ventura County, Orange County, Santa Barbara County. They were resources that were coming to help our neighbors fight the Palisades fire. At 18:15, while on our second ELT call of the day, the Eden fire broke. Because of our preparation, we immediately deployed full staffing at our EOC and put in some of the preparedness that our team had been working on. A little background on the Eden fire and where the fire came in. It came in a mutual threat zone area. And what that means is you have resources from both Pasadena Fire Department and LA County Fire Department that responded. And we arrived on scene almost simultaneously, which was really helpful. At that moment, the winds were extremely erratic and the fire was growing at an astounding rate, with ember casts going blocks ahead of the fire. Simultaneous firefighting efforts as well as evacuation efforts were underway. With our partners from the Pasadena Police Department and their heroic efforts, numerous lives were saved. A little additional background: if you're not aware, Southern California has some of the best aerial firefighting assets in the world. And our partners from LA City and LA County, but especially LA County and Angeles National Forest, have some of the best fleet around. That evening, we had actually 3 helicopters initially try and make it to the Eaton fire. One of them got almost overhead before the erratic winds caused all 3 of them to have to cancel, and one of them nearly crashed. We're fortunate that we didn't have an incident within an incident because of the erratic winds. Fortunately, though, our aircraft are our eyes in the sky. Not only do they provide critical intelligence, they also do a lot of good work by water dropping, and we didn't have that evening, which really hampered our efforts. Hundreds of additional fire engines were requested to assist with the firefight as the fire was rapidly spreading. The erratic wind spread the fire east to Sierra Madre and threatened the town of Arcadia, as well as west and south, threatening Pasadena and Altadena. This is where I need to highlight the incredible work of your Pasadena Police Department, our fire department, and what was already mentioned, our transit staff. I'm going to give an example of the 2 nursing homes that you've probably already heard about in Altadena. One of them was already on fire, and fire was impinging on the other one. One of the 2 had 30 non-ambulatory residents in a basement with no power, and the elevators were out. You can imagine the challenge that was for our staff trying to get them out. Also, the staff from the assisted living facilities, they were doing everything in their power, as you already heard, to assist our staff. And city staff, including your police, fire, and transit, worked incredibly hard to ensure all the residents were evacuated and there was no loss of life. It's important to highlight in an emergency that we know no boundaries. As you had already mentioned, that was in the town of Altadena, not Pasadena. But in a disaster, we know no boundaries. I want to take a moment to highlight, and this is just a snapshot of some of the many and various efforts of evacuation notifications that were made to our community that night. Over the past 3 years, we have not missed an opportunity to educate our residents on the importance of opting in for critical notifications in case of a disaster. And those efforts really paid off on January 7th. Immediately upon arrival, Pasadena PD and fire started making evacuation notifications. This occurred through door-to-door notifications, the use of PA systems, please and nixle notifications on social media. Our city is incredibly lucky to have Lisa Derderian as our city public information officer, as she has so many long-standing relationships with our media. Within short order, she had done about 5 media interviews, providing time-critical and logistical information so that people could safely evacuate. I'm confident that because of all of these combined efforts, there was no loss of lives in the city of Pasadena. And while I highlighted some of the specific areas, please and nixle and the exact notifications, those are snapshots, right? We can push out a please and nixle notification in 1 minute. When I say at 1822 we're doing in-person evacuations, some of those took 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes. Really, we did evacuations all night long and into the early morning hours. Even when you see 2:30 to 4:30 a.m., our Pasadena Police Department was doing door-to-door and PA notifications. And you'll see on a map here in just a moment, but basically everything in our city north of the 210 was either on an evacuation warning or evacuation order. So again, some of the multi-notification systems we use: business and household landlines, please and nixle, our mainstream media, social media, crews on the ground via PA systems and door-to-door knocking. Anything and everything, every option we had, we utilized. This is a snapshot shortly after midnight on the morning of the 8th. And what you see is this is the Genesis program, and anything in yellow is an evacuation warning, and anything in red is an evacuation order. And then, of course, you see the fire itself. And as you can see, multiple cities to our east, all the way through Glendale, La Cañada, all on either an evacuation warning or an evacuation order. Our skilled nursing facilities. We've been working with our skilled nursing facilities since the pandemic on areas that we can partner with them so that they can be better prepared. And this is definitely an area that we need to have better preparedness from our skilled nursing facilities. Your Pasadena Police Department, your fire department, your transportation, and many city services were dedicated to safely protect, evacuate, and care for our most fragile community. And while the staff on scene did everything they could, their leadership needs to be better prepared in their future. Our efforts, this took away from necessary firefighting and community evacuations. And so we're gonna continue to work with the skilled nursing facility leadership to ensure that they have real plans on how to evacuate their residents in the future. And we'll work on that through working directly with them, the county, and the state licensing agency. Post January 7th, we held twice-a-day executive leadership team meetings, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Our EOC was staffed 24 hours a day. And I just want to talk, because you hear EOC, like what in the heck is an EOC, right? Our base of operations for the fire was at the Rose Bowl, and I'll talk about that. But our EOC is the hub of how everything in the city gets done. And so an effective EOC helps establish, maintain, and share situational awareness. They facilitate long-term operations. They improve continuity. They provide ready access to essential information, and we do that frequently through a joint information center. We promote resource identification and assignments, ensure logistical support for essential citywide needs. We track costs. We ensure proper documentation, and all of that is vitally important for future possible liability as well as reimbursement. The success of our disaster recovery center and the evacuation shelter were based on the great teamwork and efforts from our EOC staff. As you heard, our convention center was opened within 90 minutes of the start of the fire, and at the peak, it was open for about a month, and I'll show you the exact number, but at peak there was 1,140 people in that shelter, or in our convention center used as a shelter. And in those first nights, thank you to our park staff, Coco's back there, right? They provided cots and food and medical care. We had 500 skilled nursing residents in a convention center, all of who needed medical care. All the logistical support that was here and provided by your city staff as ordered through the EOC. And as I talked about the Disaster Recovery Center, it was open for nearly 1 month to assist our impacted community. The convention center was open for over a month, and as I said, it housed in its peak over 1,100 people. I really enjoy bragging about the Rose Bowl and Jens and his staff with one phone call, which you heard. So our command post was in a park, Farnsworth Park, in a parking lot with embers and trees, limbs coming down, and we said, this is not gonna work. And Chief Sell picked up the phone and said, we're coming to the Rose Bowl. And they had the doors open for us, and that became our base of operations for the next over 3 weeks. The Rose Bowl is the only place in Pasadena that has the necessary footprint to manage a large-scale disaster. We need to stop thinking of the Rose Bowl as only a sports and entertainment venue and look at them as the critical infrastructure that they are, because they are a wonderful partner to us Pasadenans. So the Rose Bowl served as our incident command post. Approximately 3,500 firefighters called that home for almost a month, and over 500 police officers called the Rose Bowl home for over a month. And we had crews from all over the country, the West Coast, and even international there. And if you saw it, it was impressive. All the logistical support for food, sleeping. We had breakout rooms, media rooms, conference rooms, daily briefings. If you went across the street, you would saw all of your state and federal urban search and rescue resources from all over the western United States. Many of those that did searched every single residence to make sure that we had no deceased. Now I want to just rapid fire highlight some of the many things that each of our city staff did. The city manager's office kept the public informed in real time through a variety of channels. Our city clerk organized city council meetings, which we did multiple times a week in those first couple weeks. HR coordinated staffing needs at the emergency shelter. They identified and liaised with impacted employees. IT rapidly restored connections and supported emergency operations at various locations. A little side note, our initial emergency operations center is at the city yards, not far from the Rose Bowl. About 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning. We had lost power there. It was in an evacuation warning area. We lost internet and quickly pivoted, moving our EOC to City Hall. So, and our IT Aduit was amazing with helping us with that. Transportation, coordinated public transit buses for evacuations, and they literally saved hundreds of lives. Finance quickly procured items needed for disaster response. Your library provided enrichment for children at the emergency shelter. Planning completed assessments of wind and fire damage properties. Parks led initial logistical operations of the emergency shelter until the Red Cross took over. PWP provided water and system support for firefighting efforts and protected water facilities, and they did an amazing job. Rent stabilization assisted tenants with questions about habitability and other protections. Housing prioritized the issuance of rent vouchers for families who lost their homes. City attorney, city prosecutor prepared declarations of emergency and other legal agreements. As you can see, this was truly a team effort. In closing, I want to acknowledge all of our community, our city leadership team, our partner agencies, our city council, and our residents who were impacted due to the traffic from the Rose Bowl. We recognize it was a major inconvenience, and each of you deserve many thanks. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nayeli Procopio.
I'll be super, super quick. So my announcement here today is really where are we going from here, right? And I've talked to this group a few times before, and we did a tabletop, and that really did lead to a lot of our actions. We knew that we could use our transportation for evacuation. We knew every department knew their role in the EOC because of that tabletop, and you were a really great part of that. The other thing I do want to really highlight is where we're going. And really, we already started the work. We have 2 prepared Pasadena programs coming up in May and June. And I'm working with District 6 to also bring it directly to you. But you're also welcome to District 7 and District 5's prepared Pasadena. That'll be, the first one will be District 7 on May 24th, and the second one will be June 21st in District 5. One will be at the Jefferson Training Center, and the other one will be at Caltech. We've also restarted our CERT calendar. One of our CERT deliveries was scheduled to be in early 2025. We will be having one in August, kind of going into September, and then the second one will be the second half of September. And as I said before, we don't all have 21 hours to spend to get a certificate for CERT, which is our Community Emergency Response Team. So really bringing Prepared Pasadena to your neighborhood is something that I will always shamelessly plug everywhere I go, because it is a great program. We teach you about personal preparedness, what you should have in your go bag, but also our wonderful firefighters give you hands-on skills that you take home with you, how to use a fire extinguisher, how to provide first aid, how to stop the bleeding. If someone, it passes out and you need to move them, they teach you how to do that in a way that is safe for you, that is also working with your abilities. And so that is something really great that we have moving forward, and really bringing you guys in to be great partners to create a safer, more prepared Pasadena. So thank you again for being here.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, we love our public safety departments and our our local fire stations. You know, we have 3 of the 8 in District 6, just accident of geography and topography. But don't hesitate to, you know, pull in and say thank you to the fire department or to our officers, our police officers, when you see them. Okay, so equal time, of course, to our 2 principal public safety departments. I want to ask our police chief, Gene Harris, to come up and welcome, Chief, and love to hear about your perspective on the Eaton fire. Please, let's welcome Chief Harris. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
The first thing I'll tell you is a big fat thank you to the people in the community, because it was the folks in the community that all of these efforts were put out there for, and the help. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we were kind of recognizing the things that we don't see. So I've been in this business for over 30 some odd years, and we've been through some tough times. And every time we go through them, we find some things out that we didn't know. And I will tell you, on that day, I felt like a rookie all over again in dealing with some of the things that you'd never really factor in when you're talking about a disaster of this magnitude. One of them is kudos that needs to go out to our Parks Department. One of the things that I would never have thought about in the context of how we were doing this, but our leadership did, our city manager did, some of our folks in the other departments did. I did not, and that was what to do with pop-up shelters and pop-up assistance, where people were coming because they were kind of heart, bringing things out to people, just trying to be helpful. But in the midst of doing that, we got so much help that we didn't know where to put it. Sometimes we didn't know what we were going to do with it. And sometimes it actually got in the way of some of the things that we needed to do, just simply because of the logistical concerns. And so that's kind of a dichotomy, in that the people were doing wonderful things. They were coming out there really showing big hearts, trying to help people, and that help was coming in from all over. You name it, we were getting it from someplace, up to and including, I mean, just thousands of pallets of water and things like that. And I didn't recognize that in the planning, and so there's some learning that took place with even the most minuscule things that you should be thinking about that kind of come to light as you go. So our parks folks were just inundated with things being dropped off in parks and the traffic around the parks. The other part of that is with regard to the leadership team here. We've given a lot of kudos. We learned a lot of things, but the bigger part of it is that there was never more commitment than I saw with the group that addressed this fire from the time staying there in the city to make sure we deal with the issues. I will tell you this right now, you have one heck of a leadership team, but that fire department is second to none. I will tell you that right now. Let's give them a hand. So I'll be really quick from the police response piece. When we were in the response phase, it was very quick for us to kind of be forced into action. And fortunately, we had planned for some overstaffing for the wind event, and not at all thinking about a fire event, but we had some folks that were there, and we had some significant communication apparatus to be able to get more people in and work through our mutual aid. So immediately in the aftermath of the fire starting, and watching how quickly those winds were pushing it towards dangerous places within the community, we had some of our folks in blue just jump to getting started on rescues without being told. And I was so proud of the police department in that initial phase, because fires aren't what we do, right? That's not our thing. If it's gunfire, we're gonna run towards it. Typically, if it's fire, we're gonna stand out here and call those guys in, and we do our thing, right? Let the professionals come in and handle their business. But in this case, your police department, along with people from the Department of Transportation and some of the other firefighters that were out there, as a trio, went in and started rescuing folks. And I'm here to tell you that as I stand here, that we would have many, many more deaths on our hands had it not been for that effort. Communications being what they are or aren't in some cases, even in the city of Pasadena and up through into places outside of Pasadena, we have to deal with that, because by its very nature, disaster means things are going wrong, yes? Right, we have something that's happened. We've had a natural disaster, we've had a fire, we've had wind. The only thing that was missing that night was the sun, right? The heat, because it wasn't summertime. Fire was generating its own heat, but everything else was there. The wind, the need to move our command post, as you heard the fire chief say, the need to kind of think our way through this on our feet to try and solve these problems. We were calling audibles like it was free. The city manager was He was like Peyton Manning from football. He was Omaha, Omaha, and we had to keep changing to do different things. So if it could go wrong, it went wrong, and we ended up trying to make it right, and I think it worked out as best it could be with no fatalities in Pasadena, and unfortunately, the limited fatalities in Altadena. So from a police perspective, some of the valuable lessons we learned is to be really circumspect in our staffing and how we get folks ready. That wind event preparation really did help us. I think it did the same thing for everyone else in the city. The other highlight that I saw outside of the police department was the effect of public works. We have a new public works director. His name's Greg DeVink. I worked with him in San Gabriel, and as I've said many times, it's always going to be my lead when I talk about him. This is a guy that when he talks about public works, he really does make asphalt sound interesting. And it is a true statement. The guy loves public works. And this city scored when they landed him, for sure. They scored when they landed him. I got an opportunity sitting at the EOC for several days. We were there to watch public works in action and doing things that actually helped solve a lot of the other problems, mud, debris, some of the other things that come in the aftermath of such a fire. So it really was a collective effort to get people moving and doing what needed to be done. From a police department perspective, we're going to learn some lessons about maybe some of the training that we need. Start getting our mutual aid partners engaged in a lot of the mass rescue, the critical rescue components. But we're always looking for opportunities to train and get better at what we do. Another big thanks needs to go out to those mutual aid components, because as we were doing these things at the time of night and given what was going on, all the other cities had their own issues with wind. The foothill people had their own issues with that. Yet we had people send us, per our mutual aid agreement, some of their resources to help us in that initial stage. And it's incredible to watch those things come together. When you heard the fire chief talk about 500 or so cops at the Unified Command, a lot of those were people from as far away within our county as Long Beach, and some outside down into San Diego County, et cetera. They were coming from up north as well. These were people who just gave of themselves as a mutual aid component and said, these people need help down there, let's come down there and give it to them. And pile on the Palisades fire at the same time. Some of those county resources were engaged with that. So other factors that would have been available to us were not, and so it really helped that we had that mutual aid agreement and that we're really putting those elements together and fighting these fires. So police, we're gonna start doing some things like just little things. We had to go to Lowe's and confiscate all the goggles. Fortunately, Lowe's helped us out, and we got a lot of goggles. And so everybody's got goggles now. I think that bill will come due at some point, but who would have thought that I'm going to be in a place where embers that are as big as volleyballs are going to be flying through the air and flying over our head and dealing with these issues. You saw in the video the people from DOT, the people that just jumped into action. It just boils down to really a lot of brave people doing a lot of brave things in selfless service to others. So I got an opportunity to stay in the command post for the most part, where it was nice and warm. And we had food coming in all the time, but I really give the kudos to the folks that are out there putting it down. And one bit of kudos, and not because it's his district and we're doing all these things, but I will tell you that this man sitting here and the other council folks, they acted very selflessly in helping to get this thing under control and dealing with the needs of the staff. There are times where we're sitting in meetings and, we will agree to disagree on things, and that happens in any civil discourse. We have lawyers, we have managers, we have leaders, we have, the gamut. But this was a time where everyone came together, and the togetherness was very apparent, and we got things done. And I'm very proud of this organization and the people in it for the way that turned out. So that's quick and down and dirty for me. Unless there's a question or two that I can answer for anybody, if they had anything pressing. Is that okay to take a question or two?
We'll work through the program, and then we'll see if you can stick around.
You heard the man.
Awesome.
Program it is. Program it is.
Yeah, a couple of observations about the police department's role. I think, one thing for me, I've always felt this way, but I know the officers. They got into this business to help people. Right, and I know there are aspects of policing that don't feel like that, perhaps, to everybody, but you saw that, like that iconic New York Times photo. And everyone focuses on Banuelos, the officer in the middle, but there were two other officers there, too, our police officers up there helping save people's lives, right? That's why they they do what they do. And again, really, really proud of the response, by Pasadena. The motor officers, our officers on motorcycles, that is a tremendous tool, not just for traffic violations or, quick response, but in an emergency. Those motor officers were everywhere because they could be, right? It's in some respects easier, I guess, to navigate a very dynamic, hostile environment like a fire with a smaller vehicle, but you're more exposed too, And the other thing to not overlook, every single aspect of our city had people who were also victims of this fire, right? I know a motor officer who was on some of the tours that I mentioned with electeds, and I discovered at some point that his sister's home had been destroyed by the fire in Altadena. And I mentioned to him, I said, this, and he's a big guy, and I said, this must be painful for you to have to keep bringing people up here and have to, confront it. And he said, well, we're dealing with it, but these are human beings too. And every, I think up and down, probably every department had somebody directly affected. And of course, we all know many people who were affected by the fires. I had, people staying with me for a while because their home survived, but the entire block was burned to the ground. And that's a weird place to be too, right? It's not really a neighborhood anymore, and it's probably not safe because of the toxins. And I will tell you, we're gonna do, just like we did on January 7, we're gonna do a much better job processing the rebuild applications of the, I'm gonna call it 120. I think we're still landing on the exact number of homes in Pasadena that were lost with those residents, because again, we have the alacrity to be able to do it. The 6,000 or 7,000 homes, I'm ballparking here, but in Altadena, who have to deal with that county bureaucracy, I have a lot of concerns for them. But for our Pasadena residents, we're gonna do right by them, I assure you. So we do have a couple of more presentations, and I don't wanna give short shrift to anyone. Parks has been mentioned so much, and we have our Arroyo Seco supervisor, Jose Marias, and Parks Administrator Mel Alonso are here. I'm gonna ask them if they can do kind of a Reader's Digest version. And, but we are gonna now start talking about looking forward, what are we gonna be doing in terms of brush clearance in the Arroyo. I'm down there regularly, and I know, like I said, there are some needs, particularly my perception, upper kind of northwest quadrant of the Arroyo. There's some looks old timber down on the ground and trees and brush, and we need to address that, and I know you guys are, because you're terrific. So thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yes,
thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So I'll keep it brief, but I do just want to mention, the story of the week of January 6th. The week of January 6th, I was at home days away from starting my new position at the City of Pasadena as the Arroyo Seco Superintendent. So when the police chief talks about feeling like a rookie, my first day, I definitely felt like a rookie, And I do want to highlight our department, Parks. The Monday when I started, everybody was in emergency preparedness mode. And I was just standing back, let me know where you need me, But our staff, I want to highlight in particular our site supervisor in the Arroyo, Carl Jones. He's been with the city 25 years now, and he lost his home in the fire. And he did not falter. He has been there since the day of the fire. Took a couple days, to handle some business, but kept on as business as usual. And because I rely on him for a lot of information, he did not play the victim card or, hey, right now I'm not in the right state of mind. He's been very supportive. So this issue is very close to home to us at Parks, and we do take the issue of weed abatement and brush clearance very seriously. Not just Carl, but we have park staff, maintenance members who also lost their homes. So it is very critical for us to be engaged in the community and do have a responsibility of making sure that we have our defensible space for the communities. But with that being said, what now? We've talked about the Eaton fire, what happened during those days. But now, looking forward, what we're looking at is starting our brush clearance services. I know it's at top of mind for a lot of folks because it just happened, but we're we're trying to be in balance with something that's natural, something that's cyclical, something that has a rhythm to it. So if you look outside, we had a very late winter rain, so we're starting to see that green pop up. Right now, these next couple of weeks is a good starting point for our weed abatement and brush clearance services. If we had started any sooner, we would have to be circling back to a lot of locations. So within the next 2 weeks, our vendor's gonna be starting and doing our mandated 200 feet from structures and 10 feet from the roadway. Now, with that being said, this is a shared responsibility in the community. As you know, some of these property lines in the Arroyo, they go all the way down to the trail line. So yes, there's a lot of responsibility on the city's part, but also the community members. You have a lot of property that extends down into the Arroyo. So some of those 200 feet definitely rests on your shoulders as well. And we want to bridge that partnership. So we're organizing volunteer days. There's an Earth Day volunteer coming up this Sunday. We have another one coming up May 7th. We definitely want to get you folks out there involved so you see what it takes, but also what it takes to balance natural resources and community safety. It might feel reactive to say, well, let's pick up all the dead wood, let's pick up all the debris, but that can have unwanted consequences. Similar to mulch in your garden beds, some of this debris that's been laying in place is not only helping to promote soil health, but also to impede some of those invasive grasses that we don't want, that finer flash fuel that's really gonna be the kindle to some of that fire. Again, starting with our vendor these next couple of weeks, our main objective is gonna be to hit the 200 feet from the structures. And as you know, the Arroyo is a very big place, 700 plus acres. So that is gonna be our primary focus, making sure we get to those 200 feet around the entire Arroyo. So I implore you, if you haven't looked into your weed abatement services and you know that your property lines are pretty big, which I know some of us have those large lots, reach out if you need some guidance. We have a lot of resources on hand to give you some information if you need it. But yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we are keeping that balance of a healthy natural urban forest and community safety. But it is a very delicate approach. These are systems that have been in place for millennia, and here we are humans, just a speck of time. So we need to make sure that we balance our footprint with what's already there.
Thank you. Wait. There is a document, Arroyo Seco Management, Natural Resource Conservation, Community Safety. Is this on the city's website? Can I find
so I have a couple of hard copies, but I can also, if you signed up outside with Justin, we can distribute that.
That'd be great. If you're interested, you might want to just make a note or ask Justin or Jose or Mel. Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, it's the Arroyo Seco Management, Natural Resource Conservation, and Community Safety. It's a lot. Just Arroyo Seco. Just remind them about Arroyo Seco. Yeah, thank you. And then I also want to chime in and also remind you that we're getting from the fire department this time of year our own brush clearance notifications, right? A number of us, I know I got mine, and I think we're going to have a spring in our step this year, in making sure that all the brush around our own homes are cleared. As you mentioned, it's got to be a joint effort. That's right. So thank you very much. Thank you. The event on Saturday was mentioned. I think it's being sponsored by the local chapter of Daughters of the American Revolution, and it's, pardon? Sunday, the 27th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I'm told people will meet at the casting pond in the Lower Arroyo, and then there'll be guided walks and discussion of the recent CAL FIRE maps and even some help with trash and brush clearance issues. So Sunday the 27th, Earth Day in the Arroyo. And we've been talking about doing a District 6 event as well in that Lower Arroyo where perhaps we'd meet, maybe invite some expert friends to accompany us on walks, maybe do some cleanup of our own. It seems pretty green and clean right now from what I've seen, but always room for improvement again. So I've got just two more quick speakers, and I apologize for the time crunch here, but I do want to bring up my friend Dan Rossman, who was our District 6 Environmental Advisory Commission member. You know, I have a saying you've probably heard me say many times: if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. You know, those are the people that just seem to get stuff done. And in Daniel's case, it's like a busy family, a busy household with Daniel and his bride, Yarma, who's on our school board, and she's here tonight. I want to recognize her and thank Yarma Velasquez for being here as well. But Dan recently was selected to take over as executive director of the One Arroyo Foundation, a group I support, and I think we all should. And I do want to say, as you come up, Dan, with some sadness, that we lost a real champion in Doug Cranwinkle, our dear friend who passed recently, member of the RBOC for a long time, a very strong supporter of One Arroyo, and board member, and probably other titles as well. Doug was truly a great man. But we're grateful you're here. Will you say a word about One Arroyo, Dan, real quick? Thanks. Come on up.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll try to quote your quote. You said that economics was the study of human choices in a world of limited resources. And you mentioned Doug Cranwinkle, Bill Bogart as well as the mayor, looked at the Arroyo, not unlike many parks across the country, a place with aging infrastructure, increased population pressures, a changing climate, putting more and new dynamic pressures on a resource, and said, hey, with these limited resources, what's the solution here? And toured Central Park in New York City and really came up with a community-driven process that ultimately recommended the establishment of One Arroyo Foundation, which I'm now joining a line of rookies who started the second week of January. But as executive director, I'm so honored to work for this organization that works to preserve, restore, and celebrate this incredible resource that we have here in Pasadena. And so our role is to try to help be a solution to this limited resource problem. Sometimes there's grants that a nonprofit can go after that the city can't. The city manager, you can't write a check to Miguel that can help support that, but you can support One Arroyo, and we can help partner with the city on projects. And we're in conversation even about how could we be helpful in providing some resources and solutions around these issues of fire mitigation and making the Arroyo more resilient. But we're also building on incredible work led by my predecessors. Some folks have been in this ED role before that are in the room, Cynthia Kurtz and Rick Gould, but helping kind of shape a vision for, we celebrated the opening for the One Arroyo Trail. We're moving ahead on the Mayberry-Parker Bridge connection that will open up a pedestrian loop access and many other projects. Just wanted to sort of introduce myself, talk a little bit about the role of One Arroyo, and if you're interested in getting involved, I have some flyers out there. Go to onearroyo.org, become a member of One Arroyo, come out on a hike with us, and we'll have many events in the future. But I think our role is to really help the city leverage both economic resources and human capital resources, help get more folks involved, because there's so many people in Pasadena that really care about this place, and I'm just excited to help facilitate this place where really community comes together to thrive. Thanks.
We look forward to your tenure, Dan, and I know you'll do a great job. And again, please take a closer look, if you haven't already, at supporting One Arroyo. They're terrific and, sort of common cause with the city, as you mentioned, and I'm excited about the future there. And I also invited our friend and the CEO and president of the Old Pasadena Management District, Steve Mulheim. And Steve, if you can come on up as I'm introducing you. Steve's been at the Old Pasadena Management District for many years now, does a great job keeping it clean and safe and commercially vibrant, working with us. And the big reason I wanted Steve to be here tonight was we're coming up on the renewal of the district, as I understand, which is a process mostly around the owners, but many of the owners are community-based, and we all spend time in Old Pasadena, so welcome and tell us what's going on.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it. So Old Pasadena Management is a nonprofit organization. We partner with city departments, with our property owners, with the business owners, with the residents in Old Pasadena. Our mission is to preserve, protect, and promote Old Pasadena as a regional destination for shopping, as a great place to live, and as a gem within the city of Pasadena. So we manage most of the municipal cleaning in the area. We handle the street sweeping, the sidewalk cleaning, the maintenance of the trash cans, graffiti removal, the tree wells. We are in charge of the program. If you spend much time in Old Pasadena, you've seen the folks in yellow shirts or yellow jackets, so they can help you with directions. They are in contact with the police department to take care of anything that might need their attention. Also on that team is a full-time homeless outreach specialist. Their entire job is to connect with our unhoused community in the area and try and connect them with services. We handle all of the marketing for Old Pasadena, the website, the social media, the advertising. We work with outside organizations to bring in special events. This weekend, the Jackalope Art Festival is happening in Central Park. We work with them. Next weekend is the Concorso Ferrari. We'll have a couple hundred Ferraris on Colorado Boulevard. I'm just trying to make sure that we're keeping everything vibrant, giving people lots of reasons to come in. So we, most of our operating revenue comes through a special property tax assessment that all of the properties pay within Old Pasadena. We also are very lucky to have generous support from the city as well. And those two things combined are leveraged to take care of all of our programming. Every 10 years, the property owners have to reaffirm the desire to continue paying that property tax assessment and to continue the services. And that's what we've just recently started. So we are in the first phase of that. We'll be coming to City Council in a few weeks to start the process of making that happen. We appreciate all of the support that we've had from City Council. Just learned today about some extra special support from the City Manager. We appreciate that very much. Looking forward to, the organization's been around for 25 years. It's a 25-year anniversary, and looking forward to being around for a good many more. Thank you much.
Thank you, Stephen. I might just quickly mention, we started talking about the 710 trench, which we now own, and what we vision there. And one question that the council committee's been debating is, what's the relationship with Old Pasadena? Do we want to try to extend it into that new property, or do we see something totally different and sort of just defer to Old Pasadena? And so that'll be a discussion that everybody should weigh in on, sort of going forward. And your group especially, Steve, will be key to that. So, okay, I want to leave some time for Q&A and for the raffle. We have some cool raffle gifts like we always do tonight, but let's see. We have a roving mic. My intern, John Hurley, there can take you the microphone. Questions for me or for any of our speakers that are still here.
Councilmember Madison, thank you so much for the program tonight. All the comments were inspiring and frankly emotional, so thank you for police, fire, all that. I think there's the question on a lot of our minds. I live in South Arroyo, and I think a lot of my friends here do as well, is are we thinking about the fuel in the lower Arroyo? I know it's been mentioned, but I think that's the elephant in the room. Are we gonna clear that out? Are we thinking about risk from a holistic perspective? It's not just about, hey, we need to roll a few trees out of there. Like the police are gonna need to evacuate on a single road. There's no routes down there for fire trucks. So there's a fire, there's a police, there's a recreational piece. I jog in the Arroyo, I love the Arroyo. I'm not saying we clear it out with ill regard or recklessness, but it feels like I would love assurance from the city that we are thinking about the lower Arroyo and the fuel, and all of us in the room are thinking about this in a holistic way, because it's going to require a really coordinated effort. And I appreciate everyone's comments and all the amazing people. But is the city thinking about this from a 360 degrees of how are we going to prevent what happened in Eaton and what happened in Palisades to happen in the lower Arroyo? Because I'm pretty concerned.
No question, Matt. I think it's right to be concerned, and the short answer is absolutely, we are, and it's beyond the scope of this meeting to talk about all the ways in which we are. Let me just tick off a few. One is we're looking at technology to help spot fires. There's new technology now as our technological world evolves that can actually be used to identify the source of any hot spot in a large area like that. As Jose said, it's 700 acres. So another is we just renewed or signed a new agreement. We're entering into a new agreement with a new vendor to go down and do brush clearance. Again, we can't clear the lower Arroyo, and nor I don't think you or anyone else would suggest that we should. And it's not necessary, frankly. But with that in mind, I know for police and fire, it's on top of mind as well. And but let's continue talking about it for sure. And the question will be, are resources needed? If so, how do we come up with those? And but no question, that's one of the big lessons learned. And even on January 7, when we evacuated much of the city, including the west side, and I get this a lot because it's my council district. Linda Vista had a lot of evacuation. You saw on the red part of the map. There was no fire, not even a spot fire, as far as I'm aware, in Linda Vista. But the concern was, as the fire moved in the sort of foothills from east to west, if it wasn't stopped, like up by JPL, and there was a hell of a fight at JPL, I'll tell you, with I think something like 40 fire trucks up there, making sure that it didn't reach JPL, and then it could come down south through the Arroyo. So that's just an example of how the whole system is set up to think in that way. Those people were able to return to their homes ultimately without any damage in West Pasadena. But, I'm glad you raised it, and we're on top of it, and we'll, I think we'll probably have some more meetings just on that topic to make sure that we're doing, and we put out options for people, how can we all get involved in helping to mitigate those risks, for sure. Okay, yes?
I second what he said, but there are some things that we have to be aware of, and one of the things that we have to be aware of is that this thing happened on January 7th wasn't a one-off. The state forestry guy said this is going to happen more and more. These wind events, drought, and we've got a bunch of eucalyptus trees down there that shouldn't be there, okay? And I understand that you voted to keep the eucalyptus trees. Well, do you think differently now after the fire? Because eucalyptus trees tend to explode and send embers in every direction. So that could be something we could focus on, is getting those non-native trees like the eucalyptus and the Canary Island pines down there out of the Arroyo and plant more of native species that are mostly water and they don't burn. Oak and sycamore and cottonwood trees are beautiful. And there was a big, we had a grant that was turned down that would have replaced a lot of those trees with native trees. And there were people that moved to cancel that and veto that. I don't think that we need to do that.
You're covering a lot of ground. Like, for example, I've never been a fan of eucalyptus, and I've urged several times that we not have any.
Well,
so
I think we need to think about that.
I agree with you. And, we'll work with the city staff and my colleagues on the council to address that. So, okay. Right behind you there, John. Yep.
Hi, just a quick question. Can you hear me? Just a quick question. We try to protect some of our beloved live oaks, but what is the guidance when a live oak is very close to a house? How do we address that? Is there a standard or a protocol regarding protected trees and their proximity to houses?
I know that there are guidelines about, it's possible to remove a protected tree, for example, but you have to meet a certain standard, a higher showing, and I can't cite that to you. But I don't think proximity to a home necessarily would constitute that justification. But I would defer to our staff and the city arborist about that.
Got to talk to my insurance company.
Yeah. Oh.
They don't like it.
Well, I'm the chair of the Ledge Policy Committee, and we're trying hard to understand why we don't have more support in Sacramento and Washington for the insurance industry and what's happened in terms of cancellations and even Fair Plan. You probably saw the article just in the last day or two that Fair Plan has been a very slow pay to people who need their coverage ASAP. Let's go over to David real quick, and then we can come up here.
Thank you. So first off, thanks to all the speakers and the incredible work that all of you did. It's just unbelievable to hear the work that the city did to help mitigate this disaster. And when we talk about the disaster, we actually were, as bad as it was, it could even have been worse, right? And so in our neighborhood in San Rafael Hills, we had a tree that fell that just missed the power lines, and had that hit in the middle of this fire, sparked, it could have been a disaster. And so I bring that up because I also, in context of the updated fire maps that the state just put out, and we have the bulk of the severe high-risk areas are in District 6, in particular along the Arroyo. And when we sort of look at the power lines, essentially, we've talked, there's like a 75-year plan to get the power lines on the ground, because it doesn't sound like there's a strategy on how we go about doing that. And so I would ask, and particularly we've got Chad here, we've got Miguel here, to say, can we go to PWP and prioritize putting the power lines underground on the basis of the fire maps, and those in the severe high-risk area, we got to get those done first, and put the politics aside in terms of how we do it.
Well, yeah, but by politics, if you mean the resources, then I'm afraid we can't put that aside, David. Yeah. And there is a long-term plan to underground, but it's expensive to underground. And there is a methodology where neighbors can vote to accelerate it, but they have to contribute to it too. So that's the question, is our neighbors willing to contribute to advance their place? Because it's awfully hard to sell to 7 other council members, hey, my neighborhood comes first.
That's why I'm asking from the fire chief, the city, to say, how do we prioritize this?
We can do it tomorrow if the neighbors are willing to help fund it. I just need to tell you the truth about this, because trust me, I know that we have special needs, but there are many others throughout the city that make an equally compelling case. And that there are neighborhoods in our district that have done exactly what I described, who've undergrounded early because they were willing to contribute to it financially. So that's a question, and we'll get you more information about that. Pardon me? Yeah, we'll send that out, and it's a decision that everyone can make. And if there's an argument based on the fire maps, I'm pretty sure I saw some fire zones that either abut or even cover other parts of the city too, that are, so it's challenging. But I agree, we could, with unlimited resources, we should underground the entire city tomorrow. It's also a beautification thing and a safety thing, so. Okay, you had a question.
Yeah, it's related because some of us are here from the southwest corner of the San Rafael Hills, and up on our hill, we actually had 15 near fire incidents on the 7th, mostly all related to power lines and trees. We had arkings, we had huge sparkings from the transformers, we had huge sparkings through a eucalyptus tree. We had multiple homes with electrical burns inside, and this is
in Pasadena.
In Pasadena,
Okay.
in the very southwest corner of the San Rafael Hills. We had huge winds around there. So we're becoming, and just yesterday, put through the application to be a fire-wise neighborhood, which I highly recommend to everybody here to look into that. And if you want to talk to me about it, I can help you, because I've been spearheading the whole thing for our neighborhood. But it is a big problem with the trees and the wires, and that's the key that we have to try to solve somehow. Yeah. Yes, I looked into the whole thing about undergrounding, and it's very expensive to try to, it's something along the lines of $100,000 each property. So, you know, that's that's sort of beyond what most people can afford, and certainly in our neighborhood, and everyone has to agree on the street, so that's the problem. And we're on a hill, so but the problem is really, like in our neighborhood, all of these, one of the houses was smoking, literally, like thankfully, thank goodness the fire department came the night of the 7th, even though they were overtaxed. But, you know, so no actual fire happened, but it was very close. And it's all about the wires and the trees, and a lot of the trees have been there since the 40s and 50s, these huge Canary Island pines, and they're impossible to maintain with the wires. So I think it just...
And you've let Water and Power know about this?
We have, and the fire department, and the fire department's been amazing. They've been working with us. But the question really is, I think the city needs to look at more leniency about taking down some trees that are problems for this kind of thing happening again. Because yes, it's going to happen again because the winds are getting stronger. We've been noticing it. We've lived in the neighborhood 30 years, and the winds have been getting stronger and stronger around our hill. And the wires are just going to, you know, it was this crazy thing, but if it happens again, you know, so the wires and the trees are the problem.
I'm hearing that we need to look at the protected tree ordinance and maybe amend that to provide
I think Canary Island pine is on the protected tree ordinance right now, which it really shouldn't be. It's a non-native, and I think we need to look at those things, and we need help, like with trying to get help from the city.
The problem is there've been non-native trees in Pasadena for, you know, over 100 years. So at what point do they become, you know, native? So, okay. Maybe one more question, and then we'll do our raffle, because we're over our time already. We want to come up here. Yep.
Thank you for organizing all this and for all the speakers. It's really great. Yes, so two things. One is I really like this idea of prioritizing according to the strength of the, or the extremity of the fire risk. And I think that may be a way for the arborist to think about where to pull out trees. Like, for instance, on our street, we're, I think, high fire, and just a half a block from us, super high. And yet there's a bunch of, for instance, really old eucalyptus that are sitting around that could blow up. Maybe that's not as important in other parts of town, but it would be in this super high fire. And then the other part is about hardening our homes. And some of the things that I've been reading about what the state wants to do, to take out 5 feet of everything near your house, and then down to 2 feet or so, 30 feet away from your house. And yet they're not really thinking as much about the things that actually drive house-to-house spreading. So now we're talking house-to-house spreading, and that has to do with, is your house is wooden like ours, or that your house doesn't have little screens underneath your eaves that are small enough to prevent. So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking, is the science that good around some of these get rid of your front yard and get rid of your trees, even though some people say a big oak tree is going to block the embers and shouldn't be cut down, for instance. So are we going to have workshops about that or something?
We certainly should. And are you describing city trees or trees that are on the properties?
Well, the city trees in the parkways.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I think we get the message about how top of mind this is, and we've got our work cut out for us, for sure. Okay, thank you so much, and thanks to PCAC, our media service, for covering tonight's event.